Hi, welcome to Footballer's Life channel. This video gives you some important information about the history of racism in football. The history of racism in football is a complex and unfortunate one, marked by incidents of discrimination, prejudice, and inequality. Racism in football has manifested itself in various forms, including verbal abuse, physical attacks, discriminatory policies, and social exclusion. While progress has been made in recent years to combat racism in the sport, there is still work to be done to ensure inclusivity and equality for all participants and fans. Historically, racism in football can be traced back to the early 20th century when the sport began to gain popularity on a global scale. In some countries, racial segregation was prevalent, and this was reflected in football as well. For example, in South Africa, the sport was divided along racial lines, with separate leagues and teams for different racial groups. Similarly, in some European countries, black players faced significant discrimination and were often subjected to racist abuse from fans and even opposing players. One notable incident in the early history of football was the exclusion of black players from the professional game in England. In 1925, the English Football Association, FA, introduced a ban on the registration of non-white players, which lasted until 1978. This discriminatory policy prevented talented black players from participating at the highest levels of the game in England for several decades. Racist incidents continued to occur throughout the 20th century. Black players faced racial abuse from fans, such as monkey chants, racial slurs, and objects being thrown onto the pitch. Notable players like Cyril Regis, John Barnes, and Paul Canoville were subjected to such abuse during their careers. In the 1980s and 1990s, there was a growing awareness of the issue, and efforts were made to combat racism in football. Anti-racist campaigns, such as Kick It Out in England, were established to raise awareness and promote inclusivity in the sport. Additionally, governing bodies, like FIFA and UEFA, began implementing stricter rules and regulations to punish clubs and fans for racist behavior. Despite these efforts, racism in football persisted into the 21st century. High-profile incidents, such as the racial abuse suffered by black players like Patrick Vieira, Samuel Eto'o, and Mario Balotelli, highlighted the ongoing problem. In response, organizations and players became more proactive in speaking out against racism, and social media platforms also played a role in exposing instances of racial abuse and holding individuals accountable. In recent years, the fight against racism in football has gained significant momentum. Players, coaches, and officials have taken a stand against discrimination, and there has been a greater emphasis on diversity and inclusion within the sport. Football associations and governing bodies have introduced stricter sanctions for racist behavior, including stadium bans, fines, and point deductions for clubs. Moreover, initiatives such as the No Room for Racism campaign by the Premier League and the Show Racism the Red Card educational program have been implemented to raise awareness and educate players, fans, and communities about the importance of combating racism. However, it is important to acknowledge that racism in football is not completely eradicated. Incidents still occur, and the sport continues to grapple with issues of discrimination and inequality. Ongoing efforts are necessary to ensure that football becomes a truly inclusive and welcoming environment for everyone, regardless of their race or ethnicity. Thanks for watching. See you again with another video. Valuable information about your loving sport of football.